between three worlds because you are from living in London, Bali and Kiev. How did London change you as a Ukrainian living abroad?
London made me a little bit more Russian than I would want to be, because that's the influence of what they call Ruski Mir, the Russian world, is pretty strong in London, and for that matter in Kiev as well. When I moved back, when Maidan was happening, we are talking November 2013, the presence of Russian culture and narratives and language was just astonishing. So I moved eventually after that, after Maidan. I moved to Lviv, almost a year I lived in Lviv to sort of feel myself Ukrainian again. And then coming back to your question, London, on that stage, when I was here as a professional and as a student, was and still way too Russian. There's way more Russian culture than it should be in the capital of the United Kingdom. And Russia works hard to keep it this way. So I didn't really consciously work on my Ukrainian identity. I always spoke the language. It's my first language, my native language, but I hardly had any practice for years.
So Cherkasy, where you're from, central Ukraine, which language do they usually speak?
If you go to villages, if you go to countryside, the rural Ukraine, people always speak Ukrainian. There can be some dialects, but it is always Ukrainian language. When you go to cities, excuse my language, fucked. People do speak Russian. People do think Russian. Mainly, cities are Russianized. You can even trace it to some very famous songs. Russifikovanі міста, if you remember this quote from Плач Єремії, one of the most prominent Ukrainian songs. The cities were Russianized. And then this is a weird situation where people in Ukraine eventually embraced this idea that Ukrainian language is sort of second-class language and it's cool to speak Russian. And I grew up with that. I had to learn Russian in my kindergarten because kids didn't understand my Ukrainian.
You know, you say something very similar, second class, like Ukrainian language, second class. Because when I went to Ghana, obviously, as we know, Ghana used to be a colony of UK. When I went to Ghana, even though they have 5 different languages, and one of the main languages that they have, probably about 90% of people speak is Tree. But majority of people speak English because it's like a business class or like more of a success thing if you speak English. You know, it's like same as what Ukrainians were dealing with the Russians. A lot of African countries are dealing with, you could say, UK.
In a colony, we were colonized.
Yes, I had, even you're from Cherkasy, central of Ukraine, you had to go to Lvov to film Ukrainian. Why?
Lviv has this ever strong and deep presence of not only Ukrainian language or culture. I think it goes beyond that. Lviv has complexity. Lviv has many cultures and many languages, dominated by Ukrainian, but there is strong presence of other languages and other cultures. And this is what I loved about. And Lviv has always been a sort of a resistance place against the influence of Russia and even Soviet culture. So I felt that I want to be there. That when I visited Lviv a few times, when I went to the city and I saw the architecture, I was mesmerized by this old town. She was actively searching for my Ukrainian roots. I was actually consciously constructing my identity. I wanted to be more Ukrainian than I was because I realized